Hello. Chances are you've heard of marijuana or cannabis in the news or read about it in the newspaper recently. So what's all the hullabaloo about over a little plant? Well, let's start off with some background about marijuana. Scientifically, the active ingredient in marijuana is THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. This THC latches onto cannabinoid receptors in the brain, inhibiting neural processes and thus making the users feel the trademark euphoria.
These cannabinoids are specialized neurotransmitters released by neurons having just fired. Neurons temporarily become unresponsive after firing to prevent them from overreacting or being too dominant. This allows your brain to function in a calm and controlled manner, but cannabinoids interrupt this approach in some parts of the brain. Instead, they remove the refractory period of neurons that are already active and cause your thoughts, imagination, and perception to utterly magnify itself.
If I've heard marijuana is bad for you, and it can even cause lung cancer.
First off, the dangers of marijuana are greatly exaggerated, and any present risk is minimal. Studies have shown that marijuana doesn't actually increase risk of cancer, even in the heaviest of smokers. Some suggestions for why the smoke isn't actually cancer-causing is because the THC in marijuana neutralizes carcinogens in the bud, and the smoke actually kills old dying cells on the surface of the lungs before they can become cancerous.
I think that we should make the same comparisons to alcohol that exist with marijuana. And regarding all the other drugs, I would suggest that we adopt harm reduction strategies, which is looking at the issue first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. Half of what we spend on law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons is drug-related. And what are we getting for all that? Well, we're arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime.
Okay, so maybe it's not as bad as it's cracked up to be. But why legalize marijuana? I mean, it's got to be illegal for some reason.
Well, let's start off with some statistics about the impact the war on drugs has had on America financially. Since the origination of the war on drugs, over $1 trillion has been spent fighting it, with that number being $15 billion in just 2010. If we stop spending so much money on an essentially harmless drug, revenue can increase dramatically for the whole country. On top of the money spent fighting the war on drugs, millions of dollars are spent funding nonviolent marijuana offenders in federal prisons.
One has to wonder, though, is our country really ready for such a huge shift? I mean, could it be handled like alcohol?
If we were to use alcohol as a model, we would find that drugs really can be regulated with proper attention. If marijuana was fully legalized, it could be based around the same set of restrictions that alcohol currently has. For instance, purchasers must be over 21. Also, if a tax on cannabis was instituted, profit would increase dramatically. Colorado and Washington currently have legalized marijuana for recreational purposes, so if we use them as a template, we could make marijuana reform happen relatively easily.
You've definitely changed my mind about marijuana. If America can properly utilize it as a resource, the socioeconomic impact would be immediate. But only time will tell if we're ready for such a huge shift.